Let's look at the isodose distribution from the second optimization. We'll go through the same process. We'll go ahead and change the normalization. And we'll select 100% covering 98 and hit apply and OK. And then I'm going to maximize this axial window so we can get a better view of what happened. And once again, the prescription's in yellow, so it's covering the target volume very well, especially in that superior slice. And this looks very conformal, so we're on the right track. Let's go ahead and turn on the bladder opt and the rectum opt. And you can see that the 50% isodose line does a really nice job of carving around these two contours. It's about as good as we're going to get as far as the conformality on the rectum and bladder. This looks pretty good. And the periphery dose is still pretty high, so we'll want to increase the priority on the skin rind contour. So let's go to Planning, Optimize. And we're going to make small changes, so let's select Continue with Previous Optimization. And now I'm going to minimize these contours in the optimizer. And I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and hit Optimize. And while the optimizer is ramping up, I'm going to change the constraints on the skin rind. I want to make this 5950 as the max dose, and we'll change the priority to 100. And we'll let the optimizer go through a couple iterations. And now I'm going to stop the optimizer. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to see the DVH of the rectum in the optimizer. And I'm going to add 2 points. And I'm going to place these points at the V40 and the V65. These are two dose constraints we're really concerned about with the rectum. And typically the V40 we want it to be less than 35%, and the V65 less than 17%. But this DVH is much lower than that. Go ahead and manually type in a percentage, or I can just drag and put this point where I want it. I'm going to leave the priority at 50 for these points, and I'm going to do the same thing for the bladder. I'm going to add 2 upper objectives, and we like to see the V40 less than 50% for the bladder and the V65 less than 25%. But this bladder is way below that. So I can go ahead and drag these points to where I want, which is going to be slightly lower than the bladder DVH. And clean them up a little bit. And I think I'm going to change the skin rind contour max to 5900. Okay, and let's go ahead and continue optimization. And we're going to let the optimizer go through a couple iterations. And I'm watching here to make sure that the skin rind decreases its max dose. So we'll let it go through a couple iterations watching this contour. But this is a fairly large contour, so it's hard to see any decrease to the max dose. And let's go ahead and turn on the bladder and rectum contours and make sure that our DVH points are still holding below the DVH curves. They're doing a really nice job. So one other thing I'll do prior to leaving this optimization is I'll increase the upper constraint for the PTV opt. So I'm going to go ahead and change that priority because we want the max dose of the PTV to be less than 110% of the prescription dose. And this completes this third optimization for an IMRT prostate plan.